remember, we are about building a movement. We are about building a movement here. Some of you have heard me say it before, and I say it a lot, but who are we, the drug policy reform movement? We're the people who love drugs, we're the people who hate drugs, and we're the people who don't give a damn about drugs. But every one of us believe that the war on drugs is not the way to deal with drugs in our society today. We're the people who have enforced these laws, we're the people who have been victimized by these laws, and the people who have never been directly touched by these laws, but who nonetheless believe that the war on drugs is not the way to deal with drugs in our society today. And who else are we? We are the people of color who have been horribly victimized and targeted in this war on drugs, and we are the people of lesser color who have also been so horribly victimized by these laws and policies. We are all people who care about freedom and justice, but it's inevitable. It's inevitable in every movement that we don't see eye to eye in many things. Look, sitting in this room are people from across the political spectrum. Sitting in this room are people from across the drug use spectrum and the drug law spectrum, right? We know all of this. They're sitting in this room are people who primarily fight about marijuana, and others about harm reduction, others about methadone, and others about mandatory minimums, others about psychedelics. And some of us want to elevate our struggle over others. That's okay in your own lives. But understand that we are all part of one struggle. Marijuana is moving hard and fast now. I can't believe it. That Gallup poll that came out a few weeks ago, did you see that? From 23% support for legalizing marijuana in 1983 up to 44% today. It's 54% out west. It's 53% among Democrats. It's over 50% among people under the age of 50. And the thing I can't figure out, just 4 years ago, if you asked men and women about support for legalizing marijuana, there was a 10-point gender gap, with women 10% less likely to support legalizing marijuana than men. You know what else? That gender gap just disappeared in 4 years. I don't get it, but thank you, women. I don't know what's going to happen with this marijuana thing. It's going to be rocky. Look what's going on in California right now. Richard Lee's put together an initiative, probably going to be on the ballot. Other of my allies are saying too soon, too fast, don't like the design. We can't control the whole thing. One way or another, there's more people fighting for this struggle. It's going to be rocky. Who knows? Look at the struggle for gay marriage right now. Step forward, step backwards. You can't control this thing. We got to be smart, we got to be wise, but we got to continue to operate in good faith with one another. That's part of it. Because there's nobody you hate so much. Nobody you hate so much in the struggle for freedom and social justice as your fellow ally. Why? Because you know them too well. You're fighting over turf and credit and funding and girlfriend and boyfriends and all this sort of stuff. It's just part of what it is to be in there. Our opponents, our enemies, they're abstract. They're over there. But we have to keep it together. And I'll tell you, I found myself recently, I'm going to speaking at conferences of doctors who specialize in pain medication. And I'm saying to them, listen, there is no basis in medicine or science or ethics for you not to utilize medical marijuana in treating pain and problems and to consider that an important option. And then that evening, I go and talk to a marijuana reform group. And I say, let me tell you something. There is no basis for you to demean and diminish the millions of Americans who rely legitimately on opioid medications to deal with their pain and their struggling. We're all in this about a rational utilization about this. Yes, you can say opioids are more dangerous and you can overdose and die, but that doesn't mean they don't have legitimate uses for millions and millions and millions of people. Let's not make those separations. The psychedelics area, I love the psychedelics. Part of it is because we really can talk good stuff about drugs. And now more and more literature emerging about dealing with pain and addiction and all sorts of other things. And it's not just the scientific, but I'm speaking personally as somebody who will admit that psychedelics have played an important role in my life and my evolution. Right now, I have to say, in my life, it's I regard psychedelics a little bit like the way I do fasting on Yom Kippur. Once a year, to cleanse the soul and open up the spirit. This movement is also about people in recovery. It is about the millions of people who have struggled with addiction and see the worst that drugs can do. It is about the millions of brave people hanging on to the 12 steps in sobriety with their bare fingers, knowing that avoiding the use of these drugs is pivotal to their lives, their future, the well-being of the people around them. Millions of people counting the days, the weeks, the months, the years in sobriety because that is powerful. It is about life and about substance and about finding your own peace, recovery. It is also about the people in recovery who are not purely sober. It is about the people in recovery who have put a life of addiction to heroin and cocaine and booze behind them, but have found that smoking an occasional joint or a little glass of wine, that's okay. I can take the medication the doctor offers me. That for me, the definition of recovery is not just sobriety. The definition of recovery can be putting a problem with my drugs behind me so that today I can still use drugs and they are no longer a problem for me or anybody else I deal with. That too can be a definition of recovery. We are all in this together. Now, I'm going to go a few minutes over so you're going to have to rush to the next thing, but let me just get this out, okay? Because, it's not just Americans sitting here, right? As an American, first of all, to the hundreds of people from outside the United States here, I want to apologize. I want to apologize for the ways in which my government and my country has victimized so many countries around the world. Exported. But I also want to say, looking around the world, I see lots of hope. I look down in Latin America and I see that Latin American Commission, those former presidents, telling it the way it is. That we have a problem with punitive prohibition, and that harm reduction and marijuana decriminalization are part of the answer, and that we have to break the taboo on open and honest dialogue, just as Senator Webb is calling for in Washington, D.C. I look at the changes in law in Mexico. I know they're not as great as we all said they were, but still it's a step forward. And the change in Argentina, and the emerging changes in Brazil and Chile and Ecuador. There is a movement happening. It's about harm reduction. It's about the legalization of coca and the legitimization of coca. It's about ending eradication campaigns. It's about opening up the debate on ending prohibition in the Americas. There's been movement in Latin America in the last year like never, ever before. I look at Europe. The Portuguese.
É nóis.
Oh, no! We're taking a diversion, and it wasn't about drug courts. It was about if you get caught with drugs, we're not sending you to prison. We're going to send you to a panel of health experts that exist outside the criminal justice system to see if you need help. And if you don't, we will leave you alone, and if you do, we will try to figure out the best thing, and the cops don't got to get involved in the whole thing.
Yeah!
Germany and England and the Netherlands legalizing heroin maintenance, and it's about our friends in Denmark saying we don't need any more research anymore to tell us that heroin maintenance works. We're going to start it January 1st, skip the research phase, we know it works, we don't have to prove it all over again here, right? It's about when the backward Home Secretary of the United Kingdom fires the government's drug policy advisor, David Nutt, for speaking the truth. It's about the outrage that responds to that thing. It's about people saying, maybe we made a mistake. It's about a transformation from 10 years ago when firing somebody like that would have been just politics as usual, to now it's, what are you doing? Isn't there science that we're talking about? And when does that have to be advocated in favor of politics? There's a reaction that is happening. It's the Czechs who have just decriminalized drug possession and will institute that in January. It's the movement happening in Europe. Even when you read about the Dutch coffee shops being pulled back a bit, the Dutch still providing a model for us. And in Canada, there's a good reason we're going to honor two people from Vancouver. Okay, tomorrow, if you don't have your tickets to the awards dinner, buy them. It's going to be an amazing occasion tomorrow night. Two people, Vancouver, British Columbia, leading the way as outposts of European sensibility on harm reduction and drug policy reform in the United States. As for your national government, Stephen Harper, your Prime Minister, chasing after the failures of the American drug war, chasing like a stupid dog, not knowing any better, right? But he will pass, he will move on, and it will move on forward. In Asia, if somebody had said 10 years ago that in Malaysia, in Indonesia, in Vietnam, and in China, and Iran, you will have needle exchange programs and methadone maintenance programs, you would have thought you were smoking something really funny. But every one of those countries is doing that now. Still in the midst of a horrific drug war system where drug treatment is really an excuse for incarceration, but nonetheless moving forward. There is a global movement emerging. It is. One of my heroes is, as you might have mentioned, George Soros. George Soros,